Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for building the foundations of the future with FlowForma Process Automation. As you all trickle in this afternoon, I would like to tell you a little bit about our hosts today from FlowForma. We have Paul Stone, who is a product specialist at FlowForma, the leading provider of no-code process automation tools. Paul uses his in-depth product and construction sector experience to support FlowForma's construction clients in achieving serious savings and competitive advantage. Paul is committed to empowering citizen developers to rapidly digitize their process and manage them smarter and faster without using any software code. Also with us is the Chief Technical Officer at FlowForma, Gerard. He is very passionate about supporting users on their digital transformation journey with no-code process automation. Gerard has over 20 years of experience designing and delivering process automation solutions that have allowed businesses to integrate and automate their operations to deliver better customer experiences and also improve efficiency. With that being said, we have our two hosts here on camera, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to them. And I just wanted to let you know, if you have any questions, we will be taking time after the presentation to answer them. You can write them either in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will be sure to address them following the presentation and the demo. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for your time today. It's much appreciated. We're going to use this time to show you how you can automate all sorts of processes across your business. Hopefully at the end of this session, you'll have a good understanding of how other construction companies have benefited from process automation and how they went about achieving this. So we're going to do that by, first of all, just taking some key insights out of a recent survey we ran for the construction sector. So we have a few findings from that we're going to call out and discuss. Then we're going to have a look at some case studies. I think everybody's interested in what other organizations have done to achieve the kind of benefits we can point at. And then we're going to show you FlowForma in action, so that you can see how other organizations have gone about building and using FlowForma, or building processes in FlowForma and using those processes to achieve benefit. Then we'll just have some questions and answers at that stage. So let's get started with this. So first off, in terms of this survey, construction is a key sector for us. So what we really wanted to do was to try to understand the current challenges that the construction sector is facing. And we're also very interested in understanding how technology can play a role in solving the problems that you face today. And we also wanted to judge your appetite for actually using technology to digitize your business and to see what kind of digital capabilities you had already and what kind of things you were looking to do in the future. So with this in mind, we ran a survey, surveyed a wide range of people really across various companies within the sector. And these ranged from CEOs to managers, project managers, etc., across the business. And from that, we drew some key insights which help us understand your sector and where you're going. So the first one here is just really about the key challenges, or what's preventing people from actually digitizing at the moment. So, I mean, there's four kind of key things that came out of this. I would say that the top one is that 50% of the surveyed companies are happy with their existing processes. And that's kind of interesting because 90% of construction companies also said they were still using outdated methods to run their processes, such as paper and Excel. And so 50% of people are happy with their processes, but they're using potentially outdated methods to actually execute those processes. So Paul, have you got any kind of insights or anything on these results that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to see that people are satisfied with their processes. And I think that while they're satisfied with the processes, the existing processes are not helping them in many, many ways. They're not helping them to change and become more efficient, to be competitive, and so on. So while the process might work, it's using, as you say, outdated technology. It's very interesting then to see the other stats on the screen. A big problem with introducing digital processes is difficulty in acquiring the kind of IT resources, the IT talent that's going to enable that to happen. So if you're dependent on an IT supplier or having your own IT resources to digitize your processes, it's really a very difficult thing to do because the IT market is very tight. It's also quite expensive to do that as well. So we offer an alternative solution with FlowForma, which is a no-code approach, so that basically people in your organization who understand your business, who understand your processes, they can actually create solutions themselves without any dependency on IT. And I think that removes at least a couple of the key blockers to progress within construction companies today.
Yeah, I think, the difficulty acquiring IT talent or not being able to free up your existing IT capabilities to support initiatives like process automation, it's not unique to this sector by any means, particularly at the moment with the undersupply and over demand for these kind of skills. I wonder, does that feed into the too expensive for our company, which is one of the other points there at 34%?
Yeah, absolutely. IT skills are only increasing in terms of their cost. And regardless of which way you go, whether you use contract resources or you use an IT supplier like a package system or whatever, IT costs are always high, and no matter which way you go. And I think increasingly we're finding that construction companies are looking to do things themselves, to actually use their own internal resources, the business people that they have, the construction workers, the engineers, to actually create those solutions that make a real difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is enabling business people to build out a lot of the solutions they need. Just like, people can sit down and use Excel today. They don't need IT to get involved in that. I think giving them the tools that allow them to automate their business processes in an easier way helps overcome that shortage of IT skills. And later on, we'll talk about how organizations actually address their automation challenge and how much they rely on IT and how much they rely on business. Okay, so we're going to just do a quick poll here. So we'd really like to understand what your main process challenge is. So if we could just run that poll, and then we'll see what the results of that are. So here, what we're just looking at, again, it's another question that we asked in our survey to try and understand what people's main process challenge were. And we have some of the results there on the screen. So we're just trying to see if you tally with those results or how you feel about them. That's great, thank you. Okay, so we can see there that security concerns are there. We can chat about that, and over-reliance on heavy paper processes, restricted access to processes when working remotely, and the inability to create a single overview process, amazingly evenly divided there. And we just see how that came across in our own survey. Okay. So if we have a look at our own results here, security concerns top the list, which was initially a bit surprising. But then again, when you think about the distributed nature of processes in the construction sector, where a process might happen within one specific area, perhaps in an administration area, but it can also span out to site offices, to contractors, to staff, to third-party suppliers, etc. Then that lets us understand a bit more about why security might be a concern in terms of remote access to data. I don't know, Paul, do you want to add any insights to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
I think the key thing is that the reliance on paper-heavy processes there is so high. It's really surprising that it's 46% of the poll of people polled are reliant on paper-heavy processes. You would have thought that would have improved during the pandemic and so on. So it's surprising that even today, there's still a very heavy reliance. And of course, paper-heavy processes are actually inefficient And also you're losing a lot of the data that's recorded on paper, and data can be entered inaccurately, etc. So really that reliance on paper-heavy processes is holding you back, and people, again, it's quite surprising that it's so high on that list. It's also interesting to see, of course, the other stats as well, and also to see that they're all significant, especially there down the bottom there, the inability to create a single overview of processes. When those processes are running on paper, of course, it's pretty much impossible to create an overview. And we'll talk a little bit more about our case studies towards the end of the show today, where we'll show how people have digitized processes and enabled them to have that single view of processes because all the information is stored centrally.
Okay, yeah, I think the kind of data being trapped on paper forms is a very interesting point. Elsewhere in our survey, it was indicated that something like 96% of the people surveyed felt that data was a key enabler for decision making on projects. So, getting that data out of it, the form, off paper forms, and into something which permits analysis and allows you to review the data to generate insights is really key to many organizations. Okay, so just as an example, here are some of the processes that organizations currently use FlowForma to digitize. So I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see the kind of examples there. You can see safety and quality inspections feature quite highly, but also anything where we're capturing data out on site and passing it back, perhaps for centralized collation, such as things like materials requisitions, or indeed providing weekly reports, field work reports, etc., so that people have better visibility of what has actually happened in the overall organization. But remember as well that as you automate some of these processes that span different locations, and as you remove paper, particularly from those processes, you're actually speeding up the process and making information available a lot quicker in the overall business so that you can make better decisions. I think there's also some very standardized processes there, like permit to dig and concrete pour. So FlowForma can handle all of these types. It's really up to yourself to define these processes and tailor them to your own organization. And Paul will show you that a bit later on. All right, so we'd like to just run another quick poll here, and we'd like here to just understand what kind of systems you might want to integrate with. So here what we're looking at really is what applications, if you were automating your processes, what applications you'd really like those processes to automatically be talking to or to be integrated with. Okay, so I can see there the results are in. So I think we can share those results there. So that would very much again tally with our own survey and what we found out of that. Okay. So when we asked the same question, we got very similar results. So document management and project management software were up there at the top of the list. So, I mean, from our point of view, process automation rarely exists in a standalone form. I mean, you can start that way as you automate certain processes, but normally people want to integrate it with other applications that they have in use. So the most common thing that's in use in the construction sector is project management software. So it's no surprise really that organizations are looking to integrate with that application. Document management is obviously key as well. And third on our list was CRM systems such as HubSpot and Salesforce. And then not too far behind that was finance systems. So I suppose one of the challenges is how you integrate with such an array of different applications, particularly in the construction sector where lots of different applications are in use. I don't know, Paul, have you any insights or would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. All of our construction clients are really looking to integrate back-end systems, especially project management software. As all of the construction processes, obviously processes running on site, but also processes running at HQ, etc., they all need to reference and update systems that store master data like project details and hold copies of master documents and so on. And really any system that automates processes needs to be able to talk and communicate and pass data and documentation into these systems. And as part of our own development, we've built out features within our product that allow you to integrate very easily with those backend systems. So for example, if you're capturing a document as part of that process, that document can be automatically updated into a backend system. And also you can manage things like version controls. So we can talk a little bit more about this, I guess, in the demonstration area. But one of the features, and I know Gerard can talk much more about this than I can, but can integrate with any application that supports a web API. So many applications these days support web APIs that we built out specific features that allow you to do that, to integrate with those applications very easily.
Yeah, so to just add to that, I mean, one of the challenges that we have in providing, we mentioned earlier that FlowForma is a no-code application, which allows business users to develop it. So one of the challenges there is just how do you allow business users to develop integration into other applications? So we put quite a lot of effort into that. And we have standard ways of integrating with lots and lots of different applications in a very non-technical way. One of the more recent features we introduced a little while back was just the ability, as Paul says, to call any web service. So that gives us a lot more capability in terms of talking to other applications. But just to maybe highlight one of those things, it's a constant journey for us expanding out the integration that we have in sport. So more recently, we spent some time integrating with Procore. So we now have provided a very easy way for organizations that use Procore to integrate FlowForma and Procore. Now, Procore is quite a broad application. It handles lots of different things from a construction project perspective. And we can handle many of those different types of data or different types of objects that Procore supports within FlowForma. So this allows you use Procore and then use FlowForma to extend out processes beyond what Procore can currently do. And it's a two-way integration. So you can send things from Procore to FlowForma, and you can send data back from FlowForma back into Procore. And overall, that's about maximizing efficiency so that you get the full benefit of process automation. So you don't do any manual steps there. And we mentioned earlier about capturing data off paper forms. As you make your forms electronic, it allows you to capture that data immediately and feed it directly into your core system, in this case, Procore. Okay. Next one we're just going to talk about is we have a number of case studies. And as I said at the start, I think people like to hear case studies and see what other organizations have done with the product and the kind of benefits they'd actually achieved. So I'm going to hand over to Paul now, who's just going to walk us through, first of all, just a gallery of our customers, and then just to go through 3 case studies.
Thanks, Gerard. Yeah, we first of all, FlowForma is quite a large organization. We deal with clients all the way around the world, all the way from New Zealand right around the world to the west coast of the US. And we deal with construction companies of many different kinds. So some very large who focus in maybe on very large civil construction projects, down to smaller companies who are specialists, who specialize in specific areas like exterior restorations, for example, or luxury home refurbishments. So we really deal with a wide range of customers in the construction sector. And the reason we do that is because our system is designed to support any process that you may have. So regardless of what your speciality is, or what the size of your organization or the structure of your organization, our FlowForma is all about creating processes for you so that you can work the best way with the resources that you have to achieve the goals that you have, right? So as a result of that, as you can see by the very wide mixture of logos there, we work with many different types of organizations. And maybe go to the next slide, Gerard.
Yeah, sure.
And one example of those is Tideway East. Tideway East is a very large joint venture running in the UK, as it happens. And they are a big civil engineering organization. So they're currently digging a large tunnel under the River Thames, and they implemented FlowForma primarily to drive efficiency. So they selected several processes to digitize. And once those processes were digitized, they're able to record the actual performance of those processes. They're able to see the benefits clearly of what they were getting out of FlowForma. And they went about measuring the improvements that they made by introducing more efficient digital processes. And they worked out they had saved 700 hours on repetitive tasks in 1 year alone. It also enabled them to do things that they couldn't do before. So they were able to quickly react to the pandemic situation and record certain mandatory COVID-19 information as they carried out their work. So it really made a big difference with their flexibility in the way that they worked, and also they made a significant difference in the bottom line in terms that it actually produced a significant productivity increase. If we can move on to the next slide there, Gerard.
Yeah, sure.
So Morgan Construction are a civil construction and environmental projects company headquartered in Canada with over 500 employees. But most importantly, at any one point in time, they would have over 200 contractors working on various projects within the organization. And that workforce constantly changed as projects started up, closed down, contractors came on board and were offboarded. And they used to manage all of this using emails and spreadsheets. They had a very, very large spreadsheet which held a list of all the contractors and their availability, where they're properly onboarded, had it gone through the correct checks, etc., etc. The only problem with a spreadsheet is it's very hard to maintain that spreadsheet and keep it up to date. So they had the reports running off the spreadsheet so they can see the movement of the workforce. But you know what? Those reports were often out of date. They were incorrect because if you have the underlying data is wrong, then obviously any reports you run off that are wrong too. So they introduced FlowForma to try and get a hold on this, to actually introduce some controls, put some controls in place to ensure that all the contractors were onboarded correctly and have that stored automatically in a central database. And they could have real-time reporting and they could see exactly at any point in time what the state of the workforce was. And this had real significant benefits. Obviously, it improved data integrity, but it also improved the speed of operations. So they're able to improve and reduce the time frame for that onboarding and introduce significant time savings. And once they had implemented this first phase, they then went on very quickly to do the same for their fleet management. So they had a lot of mobile vans and so on that would travel around between jobs, and they were able to manage that just like they would manage the contractor employees. So really significant benefits there. And maybe the final one, Gerard. So the final one here is Sullivan Engineering, and we're just going to talk about 3 case studies today, by the way, but we have many more on our website if you want to drop over and have a look. But Sullivan Engineering were a company who specialize in exterior restorations. They're a very fast-growing company, quite a successful company, recently acquired, and they had they introduced FlowForma to basically improve certain processes within the organization. But what they found was that it was very quick and easy to digitize processes. They could actually digitize a process on FlowForma more than 4 times faster than other tools they may have used, like Power Platform, for example, Power Apps. So they decided to start digitizing at scale because they found it so easy that, the original scope of digitizing field inspections and leak investigations, yes, it was all great, but you know what, they could go a lot further, and they digitized more and more processes in the organization. And the spin-off of all of this was quite surprising. By digitizing the processes, they didn't just make the process more efficient, they improved the quality of work, and they were able to demonstrate that to the customer, ultimately having a significant improvement in customer satisfaction. And of course, any improvement you have in customer satisfaction ultimately makes you more competitive in the marketplace. So there was a whole lot of spin-off benefits that really made a difference and improved their position from a competitive perspective, but also just reputation, improving quality of work and improving safety on site as well. At the end of the day, all that data was collected and they had a true source of data, a central source of data, just like Morgan Construction, where they were able to run reports and have real-time dashboards to see where their work was at any point in time. Okay.
Good. Yeah, so that's very interesting. I'd just like to emphasize as well that those case studies are available on our website, and also in several cases we would have done previous webinars with the companies. So you can also have a look at those if you want more details on what's actually done and how it was actually achieved. Sullivan Engineering are coming to an event we're running on the 13th of September, and they're going to talk about how they're using FlowForma, and that's happening in New York on the 13th of September. So if you're interested in attending that event, please let us know, and we'll see if we can get you a seat at it. This is just myself and Paul were discussing this a few times really, and it's a really common question we get as to when you're starting, when you've decided that you want to automate the processes in your organization, where do you start and how do you actually go about it? So we put this slide together, and now it looks quite complicated, but I think the real point of it is that there's lots of different ways of starting, and there's no necessarily right one or wrong one. And it's important to pick the approach that you feel would work for your organization and ultimately allow you to achieve your automation goals, but also allow you to demonstrate benefit as well to your business. So Paul, do you want to have a chat with us just about these particular approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. So these processes, these approaches are basically a departmental approach where basically you give out FlowForma to anybody in your organization who wants to try it out, and you let them go free with it so they can build out whatever processes they want. So you might give it out to project A, and project A builds out their processes and give it to project B, and they go and build out some other processes. And you end up with some processes that are really fine-tuned towards each project and so on. There's a lot of benefits there, and it allows you to get started very quickly. But what you'll find is that that's a little bit difficult to scale. So if you want to actually build out processes that are common across all your projects, for example, maybe you might want to take a different approach. And that's where the two top approaches, federated and centralized, come into play. The difference between those two really depends on how your organization runs. So people who have a central IT department, for example, and they want IT to build the processes, often would go for a centralized approach. But people who want to actually have IT control the development by business developers, people in your organization, the site managers and engineers, but they want to have some control and risk avoidance, if you like, by introducing IT to control that. Well, that's where the federated approach comes in. So IT can be gatekeepers and manage all the infrastructure of the system, for example, but still you can have your people in the business, your engineers, site managers, etc., build out solutions on different projects and actually do that in a controlled, risk-free manner. And it also gives you the option here to actually have standardized processes that you can use across projects. So as you start up a project, you automatically deploy a set of standardized processes and then allow the project to tweak those processes to their specific resource needs.
Do you think you can kind of move from one to the other then as your process capabilities grow?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point, Gerard, because many of our customers start small. So let's start off with the bottom one there, the departmental approach, where they'll build out a few specific processes for specific needs. And then what will happen is, once they prove success with that, they'll expand out, and then they'll move onto usually a federated approach where they're actually training up more and more people in the organization and doing that in a very controlled way. So absolutely, in answer to your question there, Gerard, like people often start small. And if you look back at our case studies, you'll hear that like with Sullivan Engineering, for example, they started off by just targeting a couple of processes. But when they saw those early successes, because you can get systems implemented with using FlowForma, you can actually build out systems and have it in the hands of the workforce in the space of weeks, typically 4 to 6 weeks, you're up and running and you're generating return on investment. When people see that in reality happening, that often spurs them on to say, okay, well, how can we scale this? How can we digitize more and more? And that's where you jump from departmental up to federated.
I mean, it is interesting when you look at case studies like Morgan, where they start with HR onboarding, and obviously big challenge there, particularly around managing data and trying to do it in Excel. So they start there, and their next processes are around fleet management. I mean, it's quite a transition in terms of the business function, but at the same time, they're the pain areas or the problem areas of the business, and they're the ones they decide to automate. Yeah, I think it is interesting the way you can kind of change and grow. I suppose it also depends on what kind of resources you might have available.
Definitely, definitely. And at the end of the day, you know, we're a system that's built for business people to use, but often, you know, business people are not dedicated to doing this. So basically, you'll have a HR manager, for example, that implements a HR process, but they don't have the time to be implementing, you know, finances processes. Let finance go and do that. Also, sometimes people like to get IT to do some of the processes as well. And if they have the IT resources available internally, that's fine. Your IT resources are more than capable of doing it. You're doing it very quickly too. So we have that's why you tend to have a mixture of resources in any one organization doing this. As you say, Gerard, it depends on your organization. Who do you have available? You know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, we'd find that the message we give out is, well, start somewhere, because FlowForma leads itself to a kind of iterative approach where you can improve things, change your approach, involve other people or whatever as you grow and as your capability develops. So the key thing is making a start, really, isn't it?
Definitely get started. That's the key message. And you'll see when we look at a demonstration later that it's very easy to actually get started. We'll give you process templates to get you going, and then you can go. We give you training, and we have a whole program which actually is designed to get you started as quickly as possible and get you to basically a point of ROI, return on investment, in a space of 4 to 6 weeks. That's really what we do. So yeah, absolutely, get started is the message.
That's great. Okay, well, on that note then, I'm going to hand over to you, Paul, and if you'd like to just walk through a demo of FlowForma in action and show everyone how it can be used.
Sure, so I'll just share my screen here. And hopefully you can see that now.
Yep.
And what we'll do is we'll bring you through a demonstration of FlowForma. It's a fairly short demonstration. Our demonstrations are up to an hour long, but we'll rush through this down to about 15 minutes. So FlowForma is a system that's typically accessed via a web browser. So I think I'm using Microsoft Edge here as it happens. And I'm going onto a page. And then when I'm looking at this page, I can see here that I've got some tiles. Now these tiles kick off new processes. So if I wanted to generate a new field change request, for example, I click on the tile to open that process. Now there are other things on this screen. You can see here that there's a list of like processes that are currently assigned to me. So this is my work list, if you like. I've also got a report built in down here that shows me some materials requisitions as it happens. These are material purchase orders, and it shows me some stats on that. But these home pages or landing pages, as we call them, are completely configurable. So you can build out the pages that you want to see. You can build out your own dashboards so that the processes that you see on the dashboard are directly relevant to you. Now, the processes I have here on this demonstration area are just some generic templates that we provide for free, and they're there basically to help you get started. So we're going to have a look at some of them. The first one I'll show is maybe a field change request. And when I click on that link, what happens is a form opens up on my screen. Now this form here contains two areas. The area at the top is a thing called a step bar. And this shows you the process steps that need to be carried out by human beings in your workforce to get to a business goal. In this case, the ultimate goal is to answer the FCR, right? But the first thing you need to do is raise the FCR. And as you move through this workflow, the current step in the process is highlighted. So once this first step, raising the FCR, is completed, then it moves on to classification, then site engineer approval, client approval, etc. Now, these process steps are dynamic. So as the workflow moves forward, it can branch depending on this or that. It can move one way or the other. New tasks can come into play, or new steps can come into play, or steps can be removed, etc. All of these workflow steps are assigned to resources so that the person who classifies the FCR is a different person than the person who raised it. Also, the site engineer is a different person than the person who classifies it, etc. Right? And the system automatically knows who the steps are assigned to and ensures that only the right resources are able to access the system. Now, when you go down to the area below this, this is an electronic form. It's a dynamic form where you can enter in information. In this case, summary of the FCR. I can upload some documentation if I want to. And then I can also enter in who's going to carry out the classification, right? So I can type in a name here and the system will automatically verify who that person is, etc. And then when I press the submit button, it automatically assigns that FCR to the person involved. And what you notice is that it disappears off my screen. The reason is that that second step in the process is assigned to somebody else. The system knows that, so it closes that form down, and then the person who is there to classify the FCR will automatically get an email, and the link will be in the email. They can click on the link, open up the form, and do the classification. So the system automatically manages that workflow for you in the background. All you need to do is fill in a form. Now, those forms are also available on mobile devices. So it's so important that in the system, that you can basically fill in a form on a mobile device, because especially in construction, the people working remotely all the time, they will typically use the mobile interface where they can fill in forms very quickly and easily on mobile. So the interface, when you look on the mobile form, is very similar to the desktop, and that's quite deliberate. The whole idea is we try and make the system as easy to adopt as possible, so that if you're using a desktop and a browser, or if you're using a mobile device like an Android phone or an iPad, that you'll get a similar user experience no matter what, right? So that it's easy to adopt as possible. Now, that particular FCR form was pretty basic, but we also offer, the forms are completely configurable. So if I click now on a safety observation report, what you see is that we still have our step bar, but the steps are different here. There's just one step involved here. And then the data that we're going to collect is completely different. So this form looks very, very different to the other one. But the way it's filled in and the way you progress through the workflow is exactly the same. And what this means is that you're able to train up your workforce very quickly. So you might have a workforce, construction workers who may have low digital skills, but once they learn one form, they're able to use any form you have, any process that you have. The system has some features that we built specifically for construction. So for example, there's this ability to capture location and GPS coordinates, etc. There's also an ability to upload pictures, let's say, and then have the ability to annotate those pictures. So you can use it for things like safety observations, where you can actually highlight an area and you can specify this area is incorrectly installed and so on. So these features here were actually built out specifically for our clients in the construction sector. Now, just very briefly, I'm just going to show you just a couple of more examples. So if you were to take something like the materials requisition, what you notice is that that's basically a materials purchasing form. And what you notice is that it contains, first of all, tabular information. So you can capture lots of different types of information on the screen, like tables. You can also capture, obviously text values, but you can also upload documents and so on. The system supports a very wide array of types of data that you can capture. And the workflow here is far more complicated. So with this purchasing form, basically, the number of steps involved and the approvals involved are really quite extensive. There are actually more steps even than this in the workflow. Some of them are hidden at the moment because they're dependent on you filling in data in a certain way as to whether they're going to show or not. The system can also pre-populate data. So you notice that some of the areas here some of the fields here are automatically populated. So if you have a particular project, for example, you can select the project as the first field, and then it will automatically populate the form with the project details. And it can do that in a dynamic way. So it can talk to your project management system in the background, and push and pull information out of it. Let me just close this one here. I should just click on the link quicker and show you some more of the features that we have. So if I look at this screen here, I'm just going to open up an example of a form. In fact, I'm opening up the field change request, and I'm going to show you how that form is configured. So remember, we talked about the system being a no-code system, where you can actually configure the process yourself without being dependent on IT. This is the tool that we use to allow you to do that. We call it the Flow Designer. And inside the Flow Designer, you can specify the steps in the process, like raise an FCO, classify an FCO, etc. And as you build out these steps, you can include data inside the steps and define that data. The system then automatically creates a form for you. And you can see an example of that form on the right-hand panel here. And that's dynamic. So if I wanted to create a new step in this process, let's say a new approval, I just click on plus step here, type in the name of the step, and at the bottom I just press OK, and it automatically adds in the new approval step as the last step in the process. But I don't want it as the last step, I want it as the second step. I just drag it along. You see here it comes in as the second step, and I click on new approval, add in a question, and that adds in data that I'm going to capture. So I'm going to say category. And the category that I'm going to capture here is going to be one of two values. It's going to be 1, 2, or 3. So I can go down and select that I want to give the person a choice, and then type in the value of the choices, and then specify how it's going to be displayed on the screen, press save, and that field is automatically added in. So now I have a step raise FCR, I have an approval step, and then I have classification. If I want to see what that looks like in a real form, straight away I can test it out, and I can see that detail. So this is how the form will actually look to the end user, and I can play around with that. I can then add in a business rule to make something to branch the workflow. So I can add in an automatic action that happens in the background. So when you've looked at FlowForma so far, what you've seen is that it has some workflow steps and it has some data that you're capturing. But it can also carry out automatic actions in the background. So an automatic action might be, for example, to integrate with an external system, or it might be to send a communication, like you might want to send an email at this point in time, or you might want to do things like generate a document. So the system has an ability to generate documents built in, so that you can generate PDFs or editable document files and process them through the workflow. Very useful for doing things like drafting contracts or drafting change requests from a customer on a job. The actual document generation piece is very interesting and very easy to do. So if we take this example here of a concrete pre-pro check sheet, it's a real example from one of our clients, and it shows you a complex check sheet form where there's lots of options to enter. And as you're entering all these options, the system will validate all the data that you're entering and to ensure that it's correct. And then ultimately, when you submit that form, it automatically generates a PDF document in this case, based on the data in the form. And that PDF document, the template of that is configured using Microsoft Word. So this is what the PDF document looks like. Sorry, this is what the template looks like, excuse me, where we have fields from the screen form dragged into a template, and then it automatically merges all that data into that template and generates a PDF. It can then send that information out to an external system and get an external party. Speaking of external parties, the system is designed so that you can include external parties in your process. So if you have a contractor workforce, you can actually assign a step in the process to one of the contractors. So even though they're not actually, they don't have any login to your system as such, they're still able to fill in one step in the process. They're able to enter in some details, say while out in site, and transmit those to you. So it's very useful in lots of different scenarios. It's used extensively by our construction clients, and it's used for all sorts of scenarios, dealing with contractors, dealing with suppliers. It can be used for supplier onboarding. So as you bring a new supplier on board, you can actually get them to fill in a supplier approval form, and make that external. So essentially, the external supplier doesn't have any access to your system directly, but they're still able to click on a link, go in, enter in some details, and submit that to you electronically. And that can include document attachments as well. All of that information that's captured by FlowForma is saved centrally in a database, which you're able to report on. The system also tracks the processes, how they're performing, and automatically records that in a database. And you can again report on that using tools like Microsoft Power BI, for example, or Tableau. There are many tools out there that can be used to report on all that data that's automatically collected by FlowForma. And data in construction is very much the name of the game at the moment. The ability to capture data in your work processes really helps you in terms of, in many different ways. It helps you improve quality. It helps you improve safety. It also helps you measure your business and measure your projects and keep those projects on track. So the strength of being able to capture the data in all of your processes can really make a difference. Remember, going right back to the start when we talked about the stats and the fact that almost 50% of people are heavily dependent on paper processes. That 50% is capturing data on paper. And data on paper is of very little use to you, essentially because you cannot process it. So having that data captured in electronic forms through digitizing your processes allows you to use that data for communications, also for reporting, for dashboards, for real-time information. Okay, I think at this point then I'll pass back to Gerard let's maybe go to some Q&A.
Great, Paul. That's a very nice, succinct demo. So I think the key point there, everyone, is that that's a very short whiz through the product. There's a lot of depth and capability there, which is unexplored at the moment. Just one question for me. I know there's one particular feature which is very popular with our construction base, and that's around our offline forms capability. So maybe if you want to just talk about that for a minute. I don't think you mentioned that just earlier on.
No, I didn't really. I skipped through the mobile piece quite quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have mobile apps for Android and iOS devices. So Android phones, tablets, whatever. And one of the great benefits of those apps is that they allow you to fill in forms offline. So when you're on a remote site, for example, where you have limited connectivity, you're able to actually fill in the form offline. And then when you have regained connectivity, when you're back at the office or back home, you can automatically synchronize up all that data into that central database. And it's a really big, thanks for mentioning it, Gerard, because it's a really big selling point for our clients in construction.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I thought that was worth just calling out. Very good. So now we have some time set aside before we wrap up, just for any questions that might have come in throughout this webinar.
Yes, hi, this is Michelle again. I'm going to ask those questions for you on behalf of the attendees. The first question is, William is asking, how easy is it to adapt a no-code process automation tool? How quickly can you automate your first process?
Yeah, I can take that one. So basically, the way we work is that we get you started. So we have a program called Sure Start, which handholds you through the creation of your first process. So you don't have to actually do it yourself from scratch. You don't have to read help files and so on. We will work with you to create that very first process. And what this means is that it's created quickly. At the same time as creating it, you're learning how to maintain it, you're learning how to refine it, to make sure that it fits in with your workforce so that you can train your workforce to use it. We find this to be an extremely effective way of doing it. And typically people will be up and running within 4 to 6 weeks. And when I say up and running, I mean they have built a brand new process, digital process, replacing one of their paper-based processes or their email chains or whatever. And it is actually in the hands of the workforce in 4 to 6 weeks, generating return on investment. It's really very, very fast. And we pride ourselves, one of our key unique selling points is that we're a very fast system to use. And we built it that way. Why? Because, you know, for business people, we just don't have a whole lot of time. So you want to be able to get going, get up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I suppose just another point about that kind of speed of execution there, as I mentioned earlier, it just does allow that iterative approach where you can try something out, see how it's working, make adjustments to it, expand it a bit, integrate it with something else. You can go through this kind of loop of improving it all the time, which is what we want to see people doing. And also, what we also want to see organizations doing is rolling it out into more and more processes. So the easier we make it for you to build your own processes, then the easier it is for you to actually roll them out.
I just add one other thing on what you just said there, Gerard. Actually, yeah, I mean that ability to change your process really quickly and easily, using a flow designer and so on. That's actually really key for construction. Like we had a client called the A14, a very large civil construction project, and they digitized a complex process. First time in the industry that this has been done successfully. And one of the big challenges they had was getting those construction workers to adopt the process. And what they did was they built that process quickly, passed it out to the workforce, and got feedback. Listened to what they heard back from the site managers and so on. And you know what? A lot of people come up with little criticisms here, there, and everywhere. But they were able to go in and change that process very, very quickly and get it right back out there to them, like within days, like new version. And the workers really appreciated that and really helped them to get adoption in the workforce. Because at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot of whiz bang technologies in construction at the moment, and you know, there's a real challenge to you know, having purchased them, to get people to use them. So I think that ability to change that process really easily really helps get things adopted, because people have a feeling that, hey, they're involved, you know, if they were listened to, yeah, they always respect that.
Fair enough.
We have another question that came in. With a new customer, do you have templates, or does every customer start from scratch with their own forms?
Okay, well, we do indeed have templates, and we call them accelerators. So they're designed to get you up and running quickly, and you can change them to your own requirements. Maybe Paul would like to give a bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the demonstration forms that I showed were indeed templates that we've built based on their experience working with our construction client base, and they're all kind of based on real processes and real companies. And you're very welcome to take copies of those. And what we'll do then is we'll help you modify them to meet your own specific requirements. So we have clients who use them straight out of the box, but you know, many clients then will have little changes that they need to make. And just like I was saying earlier on, it's very easy to make those little changes, and we will support you doing that as well. So we'll train you how to make changes to fit those templates to whatever resource requirements you have.
Okay, another question. Tom asks, are some processes better to start with than others?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one. Yeah, well, I think we could both answer this one. So I tell you what, like based on the actual experience of working with real customers, what people tend to do is they look for processes that are specific pain points in the organization. So they're processes that they kind of know are not running very well and are awkward and troublesome and difficult for people to work with. And typically, we call them kind of Captain Obvious processes. They're the obvious processes that could benefit from digitization, and every company seems to have one. So they tend to be a good place to start. Everybody gripes about them, and you know, clearly by digitizing them, you're going to get a clear benefit, a clear win, and that's what people tend to start with, the clear win. So yeah, I mean so the first process that you digitize is often an obvious process. The second, third, and fourth, and so on, they require a bit more thought. So what people tend to do is they'll actually rank the processes based on the impact that they're going to have, you know. So how much impact is digitizing going to have? Because one thing I would say is that pretty much any process can be digitized with FlowForma. So it's not like can it or can it not be digitized? It's like, how important is it? How much difference is it going to make? And that's a question that we'll help you to answer. And we also run workshops called proof of value workshops. And maybe Gerard might want to talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, sure, I can talk about them too. I suppose there are so many factors and questions that goes through people's minds when they're trying to pick those first processes to automate. I think Paul's absolutely right. It's something that is a pain point, and we're going to get a clear win. People get bogged down in how complex should the process be, how many people should use it, how many times is it used a day, where is the process, how integrated it is, all those kind of things. And I think the rule of thumb is really pick something that's going to be a win for your business and organization and help develop and encourage the process automation initiative within the business. And just what we would find when we're talking to organizations and they're struggling a bit to try and identify the key benefits from process automation or to identify where they might start. We have a thing called the proof of value workshop, which involves us understanding your business in a bit more detail and focusing in on a particular process that you might think is a candidate for automation, and helping you understand what the existing process is, and B, what the to-be automated process could be, and calling out the difference between the two of those in terms of the time saved, or indeed the money saved, or indeed some of the softer benefits. We mentioned some of them earlier on there with improvements in customer satisfaction, etc. So that's an exercise that we offer to people who are going through that decision-making process, trying to identify where they might actually start and how much process automation would benefit them.
Thank you very much for answering that. Are there any specific skills required to digitize processes with a no-code tool like FlowForma's?
I'd say no. I think that really you need to understand your process. So have some understanding of it. You don't need to understand every detail, because you can just draft out a digital process and then refine it, right? So draft it out, pass it out to the workforce, refine it, etc. So you don't need to fully understand it, but having some understanding at the outset is always a good thing. But beyond that, then you don't need any specific technical skills. And that's the key thing here. The system was designed so that anybody who understands the process can digitize it, right? So you don't need specific technical or IT skills.
All right, thank you. Pat has asked, he has mentioned, we have a lot of employees working on sites with little or no internet. Would your mobile app support this?
Yeah, we talked about that there just a little earlier on, and we're very well aware that is a key problem that is faced by construction organizations who are working in lots of different locations where there may or may not be strong mobile internet access. So as Paul mentioned earlier on, people who are temporarily disconnected from the internet can indeed participate in processes. They can fill in forms. So for example, they can still continue to do snag lists or to complete safety observations, etc. And once they move back into an area where they have mobile access again, then all the data from their mobile device will synchronize back up into FlowForma. And if it needs to be actioned by other people who are involved in the process, at that point, they become aware of it and they can continue on. Okay.
We do have some attendees that have been looking at a number of low code and no code options. What makes FlowForma different than the rest that they are currently viewing?
Well, I think the key differentiator that we would call out is that you don't need any IT skills to configure the system. So if you look at other no-code or so-called no-code and low-code products, you actually need quite a lot of skills. When you look into it, you'll find that you need to do a little bit of coding, and you also need to have some decent technical understanding. Why? Because there are often many tools involved. So it's not just one tool, there's actually one tool for forms, a different tool for workflow, a different tool for that, different tool for that. And you have to learn all those things, and that all takes time. takes time to learn, takes time to master. With FlowForma, it really was designed so that you can quickly learn enough to actually get you an actual result that's going to generate return on investment. And you can do that without having digital skills, without having a big steep learning curve, and before you can actually do anything of any real value, right? So with FlowForma was designed that you can actually build something in an hour. Like that field change request that I showed you later on, I actually built that myself in an hour. We have a webinar that actually shows me building it. So you can actually put something together really quickly. And that's the big differentiator between ourselves and what other people might see as our competitors.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. That was a great answer. I have two more questions. The first one is, has the platform been tested for integration and security requirements for federal projects?
Yep. So in terms of our integrations and security, it's very strong security. Why? Because we piggyback off Microsoft security. So our system works on the Microsoft platform, and we use Microsoft's authentication and Microsoft's extensive certifications backing up all of that. And the entire system, in fact, works on the Microsoft Azure cloud. So very extensively certified. In terms of federal projects, I'm not sure whether we currently work with federal projects or not. I think we do, but we'd have to check that and get back to you at some point. Maybe if you could contact us separately, we can talk about that. Sorry, Gerard.
Yeah, I think that'd be worthwhile. And I think, because of the fact that we're working on top of the Microsoft 365 environment, we're able to leverage the various certifications and security capabilities that are built into that environment. And what a lot of organizations are concerned about is, where does their data actually go and where is it stored? And the good news, when you're using FlowForma, your data continues to be stored within your own organization or within your own organization's Microsoft 365 environment. So you still have full control over it and full access to it, and still fully protected by the protections that you have set up within that environment.
Okay. Is it possible to generate reports with FlowForma?
Absolutely. There are certain reports built into the system. So for example, we have process performance metrics. Sorry about that. And our process performance metrics, the system automatically captures data, like I said earlier on, and it captures things like process performance details as well. How long did every step in the process take? How long did the process take overall, right? So all that data is captured automatically, and we provide process performance reporting straight out of the box in FlowForma. But in addition to that, all the data that you see on the screen is actually captured as well. So if you want to actually analyze that data and produce your own specific reports for your organization and your metrics. So for example, we have a client who digitized the process for a permit to dig. And that permit to dig process captured lots and lots of information. And then they built a dashboard using a reporting tool like Microsoft Power BI, which of course produced very beautiful dashboards. And they used all that FlowForma data and just represented it in Microsoft Power BI. So whether you want performance reporting straight out of the box, or whether you want your own customized reporting for your own specific needs, you can do that using FlowForma.
Okay, thank you so much. If there's any last minute questions, you can ask them now. I know we went over just a little bit over time, but we appreciate this very thorough and very great webinar and demo. And to everyone who had attended, we will be sending out the recording tomorrow and some tools from FlowForma. And we will definitely include Gerard and Paul's information if you'd like to catch up with them afterwards. Any last minute notes from you two?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, in terms of the survey report, we only pulled out a few insights that we gathered from that survey we conducted. You can find that on our website. It might be interesting to you, so please do visit the website and download it. You can also sign up there for a free trial. Don't forget what I said about our presence in New York on the 13th of September. If you're in that area or if you can travel to there and would like to meet us, we'd be more than happy to meet you. So again, website's the way to go there. And finally, G2 Crowd, we have a number of reviews up there so you can see what people think about us and how they're using our product and how they're getting on with it.
It's a wonderful time to be in New York. So we look forward to seeing you there. Again, I would like to thank you for your time and thank you to everyone who attended. And we hope to see you next time. Everyone have a great afternoon or evening wherever you are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.